Hey guys, yes, we are on video again. Why are we on video? Why is this episode so special?
Yes, and for those of you who know Bombay well, or Mumbai as we call it now, know that we're known for our film industry. So we're joined by Danish Aslam and his wife Shruti Seth.
Yep. So, no introductions to Shruti Seth. I'm sure all of you guys know that she's a very popular actor. She's worked in films like Slumdog Millionaire, Fanaa, Rajneeti, but you'd remember her from her TV shows like Shrarat. There was that Sweet Life of Karan and Kabir, and
Yeah,
lately you have seen her in the show called Mentalhood, which is a seasonal show on parenting.
yeah. And Danish Aslam, I'm sure some of you would have seen his movie Break Ke Baad. He would have worked on Flesh, which is a web series online now. But more than anything, they are both parents to a 5-year-old daughter, Alina.
Correct? And we are going to talk to both of them together about marriage and parenting. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go straight in. Here are Shruti and Danish. Hi, Shruti. Hi,
Hi.
Danish.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this and coming on Pops in a Pod. You guys are our first Indian film industry couple who has joined this platform, right? I would love to say Bollywood, but I'm not a
You can call it
fan of
Bollywood.
film.
It's
No,
fine.
no. Don't call us that.
Nobody cares.
So that's why I'm going to be very politically correct, right? Indian film industry.
Then you got the wrong guess. We're not trying to be politically correct at all.
But thanks, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. And we have this whole two-part special where we want to actually get couples. It's the first time, in fact, we're actually getting a couple. Usually, it's just a single guest, and we kind of just jam with them. But we've got you guys, and it's so much fun to have you all. We've been following you guys on social, and obviously, we've seen your work as well. So once again, thank you very much for doing this. And yeah, we're going to talk about parenting.
Our favorite topic.
But yeah,
So,
I mean, okay, I'll go.
So
for
let
it.
me first, before you guys start, I had to drag Danish to come sit here because we were both trying to catch a wink, and he said, "Can't we just do the podcast from bed?" I was like, "No." He said, "No, people should know. This is what parents do. Just try to catch some sleep at any point in the day possible."
No, so which actually, having said that, right, I'm pretty sure even y'all got this advice, but one of the early parenting advices I got, unsolicited, I must add, was that, when the baby sleeps, you must also sleep. And I think that was one of the best unsolicited advice that I got, really.
Yeah, but the thing is that I don't know how you can navigate that because it's literally like when the baby sleeps, which is a 45-minute window. You have to try and take a bath, condition your hair, make sure it dries, then get into bed, just about catch a wink, and then the baby's awake again. Then again, the baby goes to sleep for 30 minutes. You're like, oh, I've got to make those phone calls. I have to run to the back. It's impossible. So it's a myth. It never happens. It's just advice which you never follow because you can't.
It's amazing. We were actually we wanted to do this entire conversation on relationships and keeping that romance alive after marriage, but we found ourselves talking about kids right up front. So lovely.
That's all we talk about as well. The kid. She's our only common link now.
Oh, we have so many questions.
Go for it.
But so you guys met on the set of the movie Fanaa, which was 10 years ago. In fact, you all celebrated your 10-year.
No. Much before that.
No, Fanaa was in
2006.
Fanaa was in 2006. We've been married for 10 years. We were dating
Correct.
for 5 before that.
So you all celebrated your 10-year anniversary in October
Yes.
during the lockdown period.
Of the marriage.
Yes.
That's awesome. So what has that journey been like? Because there was the dating life, and now there's the married life, and what's keeping you guys together?
The current,
The inconvenience of getting a divorce.
yeah. And the legal fees.
It's too expensive. Let's just stay married.
We can either get a divorce or we can educate our child. So currently we're choosing to educate our child. It may change in the future. Like if she
drops out,
if she flunks a couple of classes, then okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. Yeah. We can't afford it. We just have to stay together.
I mean, so
divorce is too inconvenient. We have the same Netflix account, then I have to make my own account. Then we have a credit account. And he's the tech support in the house, which means I'm going to have to learn online school, which is a pain in the ass. And it's just too inconvenient. Staying married is more convenient right now.
So yeah, actually my anniversary is coming up, and my wife and I've been together 7 years married, but we've been together 9 years. And I don't know about you, so I just want to like at least tell you my experience, and then you can relay maybe probably if it's yours. There's that time where you're dating where we remember everything, and the time where we're married, when we were first married, we remember everything. But all after the kid, right? We just don't remember. So my son turns 4, and I was like, where have the last 4 years gone? I mean, because when we look at our photos on our phones, we only like earlier we had, all those selfies we were taking of each other. And now I have like 2,000 plus photos of just my son on my phone. No pictures of us. Like we don't even have a single photo of us. We have to like choose. So how has it been similar experience for both of you?
Yeah, but except that I'm going to contradict you and say that it's not in our case, at least, it's not a question of where have the last 4 years gone. It's a question of the problem is that we have every single minute of the last 6 years documented beyond belief, because in a day we take at least 20 photos of the child. So when Google Photos throws up this week last year, and you enter it and you realize that you actually don't need to ask where the last 6 years have gone. They're documented categorically in front of you.
Yeah.
Like I keep telling Shru that the problem with this generation of children, that includes our daughter, is that we used to see our own faces once in a while. जब वो गलती से कभी मेरे ज़माने में at least I remember my dad got a video camera, and that was such a big deal that we had VHS tapes of our childhood. Otherwise, there were these photo albums that you find when you go back home to visit your parents, and you suddenly take them out and say, oh shit, I forgot I had a childhood. But this generation that's grown up is so hyper documented, and they're not even on social media yet on their own. I mean, they are through us, because not me so much, but Shru still posts stuff of Alina quite a bit. But they literally, if they want to look back and archive their lives, they can like go through it in on any given day of my childhood. What was I doing? There's that app 1 second every day.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. Because you really don't. Because I installed it once and it auto goes through your folders and generates thing. I didn't have a single empty day. All of them were taken up, because every day there was at least something of Alina's that had been shot or photographed or videoed or whatever the hell. So I have the opposite problem. I'd like to forget some of it. There's too much.
We actually don't remember our lives before her.
Yeah.
That's the difficult part. It's actually trying to remember, saying, oh yeah, we did this. Oh yeah, we went there. It's like you keep trying to recall stuff. The last 6 years have been totally consumed by Alina.
And that's awesome also. I mean, what I guess for both Nadir and me, the highlight has been becoming parents, and also the fact that we started this podcast because originally Nadir wanted to document his journey as a parent. So that's where it kind of started really, and now 60 plus episodes here we are talking to you also.
I said, now that I'm here and I'm sitting with a father, I'm sure lots of women, I don't know if they say this or not, but I think for Danish and me, at least in the first year of Alina's life, specifically the first 3 months, it was amazing that we literally, other than breastfeeding, we did everything equally.
Wow.
And I think he's been an amazing hands-on dad. Literally from, we had decided, okay, when I feed, he'll burp, he changes, I bathe. It was all sort of split down the middle. And I don't know if you guys have been hands-on dads the same way. And sadly, he did all of it, but nobody documented it for him. So, which is why I'm saying it here in the public domain for posterity that Danish was a hands-on dad. And actually, he still is, because again, I know so many friends of mine who again, it's also the nature of our job, so we're kind of lucky that we both understand the pressure of work, and we kind of double up for each other. But like a lot of friends of mine, their husbands have no idea about the kids' schools or online education or anything. And when Alina was in play school, we had split, picking up and dropping duty. So it was never just one person's job, unless, of course, we were absent because we were working. But if we were at home, it would always be alternate days. Even now with online school, it's alternate days. So he and I are both very clued into what she's doing. And there's never been a moment where he doesn't know. He's like, oh, when did this happen? He knows exactly what's happening in her life. So I don't know if it's a rarity or not.
But that's also, I think, a byproduct of our professions, like she said, because we don't have fixed hours. So when we're working, and like, for example, if I'm shooting, then I'm gone for like a month or 2 months or whatever. And then it'll just be her, and vice versa. So even hours of the day, there's no timing, there's no 9 to 5. I mean, when we're working, whether it's a night shift or a day shift, is when we're working, and when we're not, we're not. So the flexibility is that we get to we get to work as much as possible. We get to rearrange our lives around Alina's schedule. And the other advantage that we have is also that, fortunately, Shu's parents live fairly close by. Because when she was born, we decided to move into our current building. And I was staunchly opposed to that, because my philosophy has always been that any set of parents should be at least driving distance from your house. You should be able to walk to them. Mine live in Delhi, so that's fairly a long drive. And hers were also, like, before this, for driving distance. I mean, this house is literally like a 2-minute walk. And I was vehemently opposed to it until we had Alina, and then we moved in here. And now I'm fairly sure that even if we do get divorced, I'm holding on to the pen.
Yeah, we're going to put it in the clauses. I have access to the grandparents.
You realize, especially when you talk to friends who don't have parents in the same city or who can help out, dude, it changes your life. Because, like she said, if both of us are shooting at the same time, for example, then Alina has gone, and fortunately she's been used to it, because she's been living there as much as with us since she was a baby, so she's not an issue. But it's just being able to send your child to the grandparents' house for like 2 days because neither of you are free is a huge help.
So that's very interesting, Danish, because both Peter and I, we live with our parents. So I've been living with my parents since day one, like born and brought up in this city, and I couldn't imagine being away from them for the longest time, whether it's post marriage, post having a kid. It's just a support system that you mentioned, that we need somebody around, and especially for you guys, right? Artists who have so much to do, and there is nothing planned in your case. I mean, I've also been in the production side of things for 10 years, so I completely understand the working hours are pretty erratic. When it comes to planning for this family, because you guys just mentioned that when you all are shooting, Alina's with the grandparents, and it's all sorted. But when it actually came down to planning to start a family, did that really come in mind that yaar hamare paas to 15 16 18 घंटे की shift होगी, and then how will we manage, how will we have this family? Like, what was that thinking process all about?
Who wanted a child? That's your answer. Next question.
There was no discussion. As Danishs also tells everybody that he had the most regimented sex of his life, because I was going by a clock saying, right now!
It was lovely.
Yeah, so he's always made this, he always tries to gain sympathy as if it's a bad thing. I want to ask how many men would have a problem with having regimented sex.
I want to ask men who've had regimented sex with this. Let's chat to them. So to answer your question, genuinely speaking, she was more the driving force behind it than me, and she had a timeline in mind, and I mean, I wanted a child too, maybe not at that exact time in life, but I wasn't opposed to it. So, as long as there's not any, there's no opposition, it's fine.
So,
and as far as how the career and the timings,
I think he's also talking about keeping the parents in mind.
No, he's talking about how agar attracted the काम करो तो बच्चा कैसे होगा, which is a very valid question.
It is.
So one of the reasons why we moved here was because we knew this about our lives and we needed the grandparents as a support system. And secondly, as far as, I mean, the thing is that both of us could have been lawyers or whatever, and then both of us would have been in 9-to-5 jobs. It could have been worse. At least this way you have the flexibility of, one person is usually at home while the other is working. So when you decide to have a child, I think that's something that you overcome once you're in it. I genuinely don't think any amount of planning can prepare you for the experience of not just having a child, but raising one. So, like when we were pregnant, Shru went through, I think, 17 books on how to raise a child, and my sum total of reading was the cover of What to Expect When You're Expecting, and that's it. So it doesn't matter at the end. We both kind of, when it came to it, we both stepped up and did what we had to do. And when something went wrong, we figured it out. I don't think child rearing and having a child are both extremely plannable activities, honestly speaking, because each person is different, each child is different, and each experience, it's like COVID. Nobody has the same.
You just compare a child to COVID.
Yeah, it's a great analogy because nobody has the same experience. Somebody's been hospitalized, somebody's like, मुझे तो पता भी नहीं था कब वो. Similarly with children, there are friends of ours who are like, अरे our child was a breed for 4 years. We had 7 nannies and we didn't even know what happened.
Yeah.
And in some cases, there are friends of ours who look like they literally would be happy if you stabbed them in the eye right now. Because
before their kids do it.
So it's not something you can plan for. It's just something that happens spontaneously. That's my theory at least. Like, have the child if you're... The only thing that you need to be sure of is, do you really, really want to have the child? Because your life will change afterwards. Whether you wanted to, whether you don't want to do, it doesn't matter. It's like it's a juggernaut. It will come and it will roll over you and there is nothing you can do about it. So the only thing that I tell anybody who thinks of having a child is, just be sure that you want a child. How you will have it, what you will do, what you will manage, what finances, वो सब फिर बाद में अपने आप sort out हो जाएगा. क्या होगा, बच्चे को केंद्रीय विद्यालय भेज दो ना, पढ़ाई तो हो जाएगी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा, ठीक है. But the wanting is important, because when you're up at 4 in the morning and burping your child and not having slept for 7 days, and you look at that human being in your arms, you better want it.
That's true.
I
okay, so coming back to what you said, I keep making jokes and I tell everybody that, I had a baby with my parents and Danish is the babysitter. So to be very honest, what Danish said, I was 120% on board saying I want a baby and I want a baby right now. Of course, it was for me, it was basically, I was very clear. I'd seen too many friends of mine go through a lot of issues with having problems conceiving, crossing a certain age. And
Correct.
Even though, things have advanced a lot, I'm not someone who wants to unnecessarily challenge nature. So
True.
I told him very clearly that I want to have a child by this age. If we don't, then I'm not going to put myself through any sort of invasive procedure. So I was very clear about that, and luckily things kind of worked out. Danish came on board 95%, but I was still at 120. And I think I knew that whatever reservations he may have, because he wasn't 100%, and he kept saying, why do we have to do it right now? And this entire thing is being governed by your timelines. I knew that my parents being around was going to be a huge advantage in our lives. So I think I was also 120%, because if it was just the two of us in this city and he had not been 100% sure, maybe I would not have been at 120 either,
Sure.
Because it's not one person's job. It's really, really hard. It's not even a village's job. Like, what they keep saying, you can't have enough hands on deck.
True.
Literally, like I remember when she was born and we were living with my parents, we used to stay awake till 3 in the morning because Alina would just not sleep. She'd just be awake and be like super playful from 1 to 3. And I was like, what is with this kid, man? Why can't she just study sleep? So we used to be awake till 3. I used to get up at 7 in the morning to feed her. Then Danish would burp her, and then we would hand her over to my parents saying, now she's yours. And we used to manage getting like 3 hours of sleep from 7 to 10. But it only happened because we had that kind of support system. If it had been just the two of us, I don't know, one of us would have not survived this for sure.
Alternatively, you need to, have the kind of resources to have a staff handling your child, which is not also ideal, because at the end of the day, you would rather have your parents interact, because those are the formative years. But that's the only other option. If you're a professional in the city, then you can afford a night nanny and a day nanny, and you're sorted. Because the nanny is eventually, once the child arrives, is the most important person in your life.
True.
Like you're like बाकी सब strike पे चले जाए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता आप कहीं नहीं जा सकते.
So Danish may leave me, but he will never leave my nanny. You go.
He's been with us for 6 years.
So this was another thing which he was terribly opposed to, having someone living with us. But I remember I was going back to work after, I think it was maybe Alina was 3 years old, and I hadn't gone back to full-time work for 3 years. So I was doing like intermittent stuff, and we were managing with, like day help coming in, taking her down to play and whatever. But the moment I was like, okay, if I'm going to go back to work, which means 12-hour days for 20 days at a stretch for 6 months at a go, of course my parents are happy to help, but they're not particularly young and sprightly. You're going to need someone to do the basic work, whether it's playing with her, giving her a bath, whatever. And I remember Danish being slightly opposed to the idea, saying, I don't like having house help living.
Yeah.
But we realized that if it's a massive luxury, if you can afford it, you totally want to give yourself that one thing.
Yeah.
Because it really takes, it's just, like I said, there can't be enough hands on deck. So it really eases our life up to whatever degree, even if, sometimes in the night we feel like stepping out for a coffee and Alina's sleeping. We know that there's someone who we trust and who looks after her like she's her own child. So even that, for the first 6 months when we were living in our own house, only one of us could step out. And it was mostly him. And I would just be like, damn it, I want to go out for coffee as well. But so you kind of realize that all these they may seem unnecessary, but I genuinely think they're a huge support system. So if you can have them, why shouldn't you?
But Shruti, you raised a very important point, which is the fact that, at least from an India perspective, right? I can't talk about the other parts of the world, but it seems like the plan clearly worked out for you guys as well, right? So there was the dating period, the marriage, and then the parenting phase came about. Somewhere at the back of your mind, I'm sure you were thinking that, okay, you know what, child is going to come along, but then that's my career on hold. Was there a plan of action for you that, okay, when Alina is born, this is what's going to happen, and this is my deadline. I have to hit back, I have to go back to work, and I have to start this, because it gets very difficult for women. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, of all that support system, it doesn't probably happen to other families. So what was that thinking process for you?
So it's weird. I do think, yes, of course, it's been my career has taken a backseat to whatever degree, but again, I'm really glad that both of us work in the same line. So if I want to go back to work, and I know that, like, before the lockdown, I was doing a show, and I remember Danish coming up to me one night, and he was like, whenever in the future we do this, we have to make a very conscious decision that only one of us can work full time, because at least till she's of a certain age, she does need one parent around all the time. So I'm glad. I remember when I walked up to Danish one day after, when she was around 3, and I got this offer to do a leading part in a show. And I told him, I said, you know what? I want to quickly get back to work because I'm still getting the offers. Otherwise, I'll just end up being that girl who used to be an actress.
Correct.
And I obviously, of course, I love being a mom, but the thrill of being on a set is unmatched. Like, I love being at work. And there are days when, she looks at me and she was like, Mama, you're going to shoot again, with this really sad, full-on look. And I have to keep telling her, why don't you have the same reaction when your father goes to work? Why? Because Mama. Like, Papa's going to work is such a cool thing. Oh, Papa's with work. Papa's busy. Papa should think, why are you going to work? Because I like my job. So I think the one thing which I remember hearing from a friend, or I read it somewhere, it said that, on any given point, once you become a mother, you're going to grapple with guilt. On some days, you'll be guilty about not giving your career your best. And on some days, you're going to feel guilty about not giving your child the best. So you have to choose your guilt every day. And that's pretty much how it goes. So I made my peace with it.
Right. So just shifting the focus back to the start of our conversation, right? I mean, uh, at least with you, Danish, I've seen some of your films where you've done romance comedies, right? And that's one of the things. I think there was a certain period about 10 years ago where you had a lot of actors. Now, look at it from the perspective of, romance in real life versus real life. How would you kind of compare that really? I mean, how realistic is that really?
How realistic is the depiction of romance in films?
Yeah. And
Cat got his tongue.
I'm trying to think, because actually I'm trying to think if I can definitively give an answer either which way, because I was about to say not at all, but then on the flip side, there are enough real life stories which you'll be like, yaar, ye to picture, ye to aisa thodi na hota really. So both work. If you're going to talk of it in a Bollywood context, also the definition of romance in films changes. The romance in films 10, 15 years ago is very different from romance in films these days. Even when I made my movie, it was a very different type of a rom-com from what the conventional, boy meets girl stories would be. I feel, at least in our case, if you're asking specifically with respect to us, ours was a fairly. I don't know if you can make a movie out of it, because it happened in like 10 days. We met, and within 10 days we were dating, and then it was that whole clandestine period on set where we thought nobody knew, but everybody knew. So,
and we all thought you were outsmarting each
I
other.
don't know. I mean, I don't know if that makes it a great story or not, but
it could make for a pretty interesting thriller.
Short. So I don't know if the depiction of romance in real life. Let me put it this way. At least the depiction of romance on films is solely confined to either the high highs or the low lows. Whereas 75% of romance in real life is the rest of it, which doesn't really make for compelling storytelling. So what your rom-coms will not tell you is the beach ka jab wo between the proposal and the breakup, which are the high points of the story, and the conflicts and the songs and dances and all the lovely things that happen. The in-between logistics of it, कि कौन किसको phone करेगा और घर कहाँ पे मिलेगा और मतलब toothbrush kiska kahan pe rahega. That is what romance, majority of romance really is. And if you can, I used to keep telling this to her as well early on in our relationship, is that if you can get past that and still want to be with the person, that's the true romance. It's not, the true romance is not कि आज हम मतलब skydiving gaye and that was so exciting and we fell in love with each other and we proposed to each other underwater in Maldives. That's great, but then when you come home after that underwater trip and then you have to open the door for the doodwala in the morning, who's doing that?
They're kicking each other and letting you go.
That you won't see in movies. So yeah, I don't know.
No. And I totally agree with you. I mean, because the multiple times my wife and I have this conversation, and I think for me also, I looked at it very realistically because we lived together only after we got married. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, just be prepared. Like, because we moved into my house first. And I was like, yeah, I used to clean up before you came in. So don't expect but that's how it is, right? I mean, like you said, the mundane stuff, what you kind of disregard for earlier, I guess those rose-tainted glasses, if I may use, just come off suddenly, right?
But I feel the relationships that succeed are the ones that manage to successfully navigate the mundane stuff.
Yeah,
that's where most relationships falter. I mean, the breakups don't happen always because of somebody cheating on someone or some major fights like that. The breakups usually happen, and even if it is the catalyst is the cheating, there is a reason for it is the 5 to 10 years of mundane stuff that has slowly chipped away at a relationship. That's what causes it. That's what you need to successfully overcome. Then you're in a happy relationship.
Danish, is very interesting the way you put it, because I mean, relationship is long term, traditionally speaking, right? I'm not trying. I don't want to throw in any tropes here, but so there's this lovely couple that we know. They they are in their mid-40s. They have two young, beautiful children, but they are so like like physical PDA loving. So even when they're at home, you'll talk like I'll talk to the husband and I'm talking to him, and then 5 times later he's with his wife like cuddling, and I'm like, that's nice. And then my wife's looking at me. Why aren't like? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, he's a different person. He's an individual, and I somehow maybe it's my comfort zone. But for us, you need to realize that as a couple also, it's a journey, and there are certain expectations that you're setting, because as an individual you might have certain traits. When you're dating, you'll figure out each other's traits, and when you're married, then those some other traits come out. So have you all seen those certain milestones between yourselves where you've noticed, oh my god, he was this person, but now he or she has become a different person, and I wow, I never saw that coming.
So I think the one thing that I can say is Danish and I have been having the same fight for 15 years. It's just a never-ending fight about the same thing for 15 years. I don't know why we're not being able to figure it out. But I mean, it's amazing. It's the same scene. We play the same scene out over and over and over. We try and change the dialogues a little bit, but it's still the bloody same scene. It's amazing because I think, there's this, whatever, these silly cliches, right? Where women keep saying that you keep trying to change a man and then you complain saying that they changed. I have no such issues because Danish refuses to change and I just keep changing. So it's literally like he's been married to a different woman every year. And yet we still fight about the same thing, which is what is amazing. I don't know if it's a strange comfort in a relationship, or I don't know, it's just something very odd about human relationships. Like, even with your parents, you've been having the same contentious issues for years. It never becomes a new thing. It always circles back, but you did this. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's about the human condition.
Also, I feel what you were asking was that stages in life. The thing is that I don't know if it's marriage that makes you change that, because my theory has always been, even when we decided to get married, was that it's not about the piece of paper that you sign, it's the person that you live with. Like in your case, we did the same thing. We didn't live together because of her, not because of me, that until we got married. I wanted to. I mean, I didn't want to get married. I just wanted to continue living together. I think that is what changes you. If you can cohabit with a person successfully in a space, in a small space, then you're fine. It's not so much that, at least in my case, I don't subscribe to that theory of, "Arey, ab shaadi kar li, to ab puri duniya badal gayi hai and we are different people now." And I've asked so many people who, it's not like some switch suddenly goes off that day and the next day you're like, now you are my Ardhakini and life is different. It doesn't work like that.
Oh my God.
You wake up for 5 years and share a bathroom with a person. After that, if you can be with that person. Simple.
But you brought up a very interesting point, because Nadir and I keep discussing this, and we actually did a series of episodes last year. I mean, with both of us, we work, office jobs, our wives work. So, the wives had their separate travel time. We had our separate travel time, dropping the kids, our office time, coffee break and all of that. But one dilemma we found us when we started working in the same house, sometimes sharing the same space for work, was that we noticed completely different, because our working styles are completely different, right? But throwing the question on both of you, I mean, looking at both your professions, a lot of it involves traveling, working with other people, meeting other people, and then later on, the cycle of actually getting the response that you'll get to the film and the movies and the work that you do. How was the last year for you? I mean, with the lockdown in there, how did you all kind of deal with that?
I was working through most of it. So I was actually out within a month because I had a show coming out in May or something. When did it finish? Sometime. So I had to deliver that. So through April and May, I was in and out of studios near my house. So I was actually in a fairly high risk space for the first couple of months of the pandemic. Shru was at home most of the time. Having said that, I feel that there was a period of, I'd say, about a month or 2 months in the middle, the peak pandemic period when lockdown had just started and people were, when we weren't allowed to go downstairs in our building and you couldn't leave the front gate without a valid reason and stuff like that. I think that phase of about a month or two, March, April, was probably the toughest for everybody and for us as well. I mean, we did what everybody did. I mean, we started cooking and there was Zoom meetings with friends at night and birthday parties celebrated online and stuff like that. Which, I mean, it wasn't ideal, but I don't think apart anything else. That was the tough period. Sorry, that was once we crossed those 2 months. I think after that things started returning to normal in any case.
But having said that, a lot of people, couples, families, everyone said that this has been such a unique time where you've been stuck in a house with the same person with no respite. Like you don't get to meet anyone. You're just with this person the whole time, going through the same. It was like Groundhog Day. And I genuinely thought that we would finally take the plunge and get divorced. I was like, this is going to happen. But it's really weird, life is just such a strange beast. I don't know what we did. I don't know if it was because of Alina or the fact that we finally realized that we didn't have anyone else to go to but to each other. We only had each other. And I had imagined that it would have caused troubles being so close without any way to get out and meet other people and, take that. You're like, okay, this person is breathing down my neck. I think we did remarkably well. I was quite surprised.
I feel a routine was established.
I don't know.
Everybody suddenly became very let's do these workouts and let's learn how to cook these dishes. And in fact, I mean, we keep joking about the fact that during the pandemic, it's not the best food we've eaten. Because suddenly everybody was a home cook and caviar was being brought down from somewhere and breads were being made. And
Danish had never, ever stepped into a kitchen. Ever. As in he knows how to make a toast and make chai and stuff like that. But I'm talking about some serious gourmet cooking. And he turned into a pastry chef. And he would sit there and make some amazing desserts for us. And I don't know. I didn't think if someone had told me to sort of, predict what this time would have been like, I would have painted a very different picture.
I also, there's this theory that I developed during the pandemic, which I firmly believe is that our generation was the most equipped to handle a pandemic of this sort. Because if you think about it, 10 saal baad agar ye hua, 10 saal pehle agar hua hota, when we were or 20 years ago when we were in college or when we were younger and we weren't so reliant on screens, we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have FaceTime, we were used to interacting with our friends in real life by going downstairs and playing, and then we were locked down and told that we couldn't do any of these things. We would have lost the fucking plot, pardon my French. This generation of kids, on the other hand, like my kid and even the older ones who I see, they're already used to communicating with their friends on screens and on virtually most of the time. The physical interaction usually just happens in school, which is a majority of it. That's what changed, and that they were anyway having online classes. So I feel that it's a blessing in some way that the pandemic happened in 2020 and not 2000 and not 1990, because the psychological impact on people would have been much more then if this was imposed on us then. Now we had Netflix, we have YouTube, we have Zoom, we have FaceTime, we have WhatsApp. बस लाइफ सेट है, उसके बाद क्या है, आधा घंटा बरामदे पे बैठ के आसमान को देख लो and you feel happy about life. Rest of the time you're on the screen.
Yeah.
The person who I genuinely was afraid of it impacting was our daughter more than anybody else, because she's still at an age where playing and meeting people is a big deal. And I remember for the longest time I still went out to work for a good 4 or 5 months. She couldn't meet her friends. And I remember the first meetings that happened when they met each other for the first time. They were all some hyper emotional hugging and screaming and jumping because they were used to that. The rest of it was still easier. You just went a little deeper into the screen that you're already in.
True.
No, but Danish, you brought up this whole fact of the screen, and I'm going to take you on the other side. Both of you all being artists, you all do lead a very very public life. I mean, out there in terms of social media, and everybody has something to say. I mean, Shruti, I follow you on Twitter. I know every second or third tweet you turn off the comment section, because I see the people who respond to your stuff. Even Danish, I know certain things have happened in the past because of social media, and I completely get it. So, as you know, as artists, as a couple who are part of this thriving media in our country, especially when you have children, right? How do you kind of moderate what do you share on in the public domain? This whole screen culture that we are kind of living through.
Uh, so I think number one, I'm so glad that the filters are on, because it's such a giant middle finger to people saying, now talk to me. I won't let you. Like, I'm going to say my piece and you can sit there and squirm in your vomit and I'm out of here. So I actually love the fact that I can speak and not allow people to be able to talk back to me. Having said that, I'm not, to be honest, of course, I'm vocal, but I tend to sort of veil what I'm saying either under the garb of humor or sarcasm or, just like stupid shit. Danish is very, very vocal. He tags people. So I'm always messaging him saying, stop tagging people.
Having said that, honestly, I realized this a while ago, but increasingly now I'm going to put it into practice. Social media is rubbish. It has zero impact on the real world. Honestly speaking, apart from that 1 or 2 days when that thing is trending and in the news, अगले हफ्ते you ask somebody who's Rihanna कौन है, किसी को पता नहीं Rihanna कौन है. वो अभी 2 दिन के लिए चल गया Rihanna, तो suddenly everybody is Rihanna, lovely, great, Umbrella is everybody's theme song. But social media actually honestly has zero impact. We unfortunately, like you said, because of our choice of professions, have to be on it to a certain extent, because you need to maintain a presence for purely economical reasons, nothing else. Eventually, when your show releases or your movie releases or whatever, you need it for PR. And I'm being very honest here. So I am very clear, at least from my side, is that when it comes to Twitter or when it comes to any form of social media where the public has access to the feed, I try not to put up anything personal. Like Alina's face, I refuse to put up. Even now, I think I've only put it up once or twice. I don't want it out there. Facebook maybe a little bit more, because that's moderated and I know everybody who's on it and who has access. But the others, and even that now I'm cutting down. But the others, I feel you need to, on your own, create a sort of Chinese wall in your head or in your home, saying that this I am going to share with the world and this I'm not. That's the only way to do it. I mean, it's a choice you make. There are people who live their lives on Instagram and Twitter, and if it was up to them, they'd be Sakshat Truman Show with a camera fitted on them and walking around.
They're already there.
And there are people who are pretty much like that. But I feel that you need to treat social media as part of your professional life and a necessary tool for work, and not let it become a part of your personal life and an extension of who you are and your personality. Because the moment you do that, then not only are you making yourself vulnerable to the rest of the world, because at the end of the day, what has social media done? It's given anybody access to you without any repercussions and behind the veil of anonymity, which is my biggest problem with it. Is that if you're going to criticize me or गाली भी देनी है, दो मुझे कोई tension नहीं है, but at least tell me who you are. So I feel that you need to segregate and keep your personal life separate from that. That's the only way to maintain sanity of some sort.
So just to bring up what you said, Danish, you talked about not putting up your daughter's picture on social media. I remember having this conversation with my wife just before my son was born, and we had a very clear agreement, and I'm glad both of us saw eye to eye on it, that we weren't going to be putting up our soon to be born child's photo. We wanted to take our time, process the whole thing, and then decide. And I remember all our family was so excited. They were like, but the thing is, because we again then extended that onto our family, we had them like a couple of weeks later saying that, I know you all have sent us pictures, but we're also excited. Let us know when you're ready for us to put photos. And I think it was the first month or so when we said, like, okay, you know what, we're putting up our photo. And even like, that's, I think, one of the first the few photos I have of my son is of him covering his face. So you can't actually see him his face at all. And I was very clear about that, hey, this is my space, even though it being Facebook. Was that something that both of you also decided, or was that something
So I
Yeah,
think
you know,
Facebook we did.
it's actually very easy to put a photo up because we're so used to doing it now, day in and day out, right? Whether it's for professional reasons or whether even on, like we said, on Facebook, the only place where we put up some of our private photographs because we know who's seeing them. It's such a habit-forming thing that now you don't even think twice before taking a photo of your child and posting it within 5 seconds. In our case, when she was born, we put up a post again on Facebook with a photo of the child, just simply for the convenience of you get to inform everybody without having to now go through your phone book and say, "Abhi kisko bataya, kisko nahi bataya." This way, you've put it up, it's out there. Well, congratulate you. At least you've done that. And I remember making an album for her as well, for Alina as well on Facebook, on which periodically I would put up 1 or 2 photos so that everybody gets stay updated on her progress. But apart from that, she, in fact, this is something that I've criticized her for, and I've told her not to be mindful of several times. She tends to put up a lot more stuff of Alina because they'll be fooling around on Snapchat with filters or Instagram or whatever. And then Alina also now has become so savvy with that language. Like she'll tell you that, "Acha, upload this or shoot this." And it's not perhaps an ideal state of affairs. Like like both of us would probably not want that to be the case, but we realize that we can't compartmentalize our lives that much. She knows this is what we do and that this is a part of our professional life. So she's going to be exposed to it. From our side, all we can do is try and keep her away from it for as long as possible. Beyond a point, like every successive generation does things earlier, man. I mean, we what we did, our parents were scandalized by it. So I'm sure she'll be online much sooner than we think in our heads she will.
But it's not just. Of course, I'm guilty as charged. I do tend to share a lot more of her and me doing stupid stuff together on Instagram or on Snapchat. But the thing is that even though if we try to shelter her from it, everyone now is so hugely online that whether it's friends of ours or acquaintances, now when they meet us, they're like, "Come on, let's get a picture," and then she's in that photograph. So, and forget us, like her friends, we tried to shelter her, and then she comes back and she was like, "Mama, can you play this song from Katy Perry?" And I'm like, "Where did you hear a Katy Perry song?" But clearly, her friends have older siblings.
Yeah.
So those kids are being exposed to music and music videos and stuff like that. Or they are talking about Instagram. So she was like, "Are you putting a post or are you putting a story?" And I'm like, "How do you know the distinction?"
Wow.
So yeah, but she does. She knows that. Yeah.
So it's little. I'm not in any way absolving myself of my part in this, but I'm saying that there is only that much you can do to keep them away from technology. They're born in it. It's
there are 2 more things I want to say. One is that I don't think you can ban your child from anything because that I feel also has a counterproductive result. Because like for example, Shu had this whole theory of keeping her away from sugar for the first 5 years because I am a sugar addict, right? So I've got like 17 cavities in my mouth, and Shu's the exact opposite. So her theory was sugar nahi dete 5 साल के लिए आदत नहीं पड़ गई. On her 5th birthday, we opened the gate and said, "Jutna khana khao." She's currently like an addict. Like if you dangle a chocolate, she'll jump through the screen. So it doesn't. But it's true.
Someone will try and
But if I keep telling her this, I'm like, it's dangerous. Like people can literally take her anywhere by just showing her one chocolate. Like it's become like that thing that she wasn't allowed for so many years, and now she's not mental about it. So I feel like you can't ban your child from doing something because it only increases the desire to do it. What you have to do from your side, and technology is evolving. I mean, our parents thought us having a computer was such a big deal, and kya kar rahe ho us pe? Ye internet kya hota hai? Now our children are, for them, the internet is a right. It's not something. It's not a privilege anymore, right?
True.
So you can't keep them from it. You have to basically, at least my theory is, moderate them as much as possible and ease them into it until they're old enough to make their own decisions and hopefully make the right decisions. The second point is, the other thing that's happened is that in the last year, because of the pandemic, every child has now been exposed to, if not social media, then communicating online. They now know what Zoom is. They know what the screen is and how to get online to a chat and stuff like that. That's Alina, by the way.
say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Alina, do you like Instagram or Snapchat?
You know that tent? You recognize that tent? So we have the same tent from IKEA.
Oh.
Okay,
go.
bye.
Have fun. So what's happened over the past year is that they've also been exposed to so much of this technology and these platforms. Their schooling is online now, so they are literally in chat rooms every day for 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
True.
So that's something that we're embracing because it's the only way to keep them, educated and sane. So I don't think we can fight it beyond the point.
Also, I do think that the more you sort of, again, I'm not making any excuses, but I feel that I would much rather know what she's up to. Because at least somewhere, I don't want to be suddenly like, where did this come from? So even if I'm saying that I don't talk to her so much about what's happening, but she figures it out from other people. And I'm glad that she doesn't feel threatened to tell us. Because I don't want her to feel like, oh my God, my mom will say, what are you doing on a screen? And then she'll stop telling us things. So I would much rather be in the know so that if we feel she's crossing certain lines for whatever reason, at least we are informed about it rather than, have surprises sprung in our faces. So I feel, I don't know, it's honestly, it's a very tricky road. So
No, but I completely agree with what Danish has to say, because that's what Peter and I also keep talking about, the fact that technology is here to stay and it's only going to progress and it's only going to become probably biologically more a part of you, so you can't get rid of it, right? I mean, you guys also wearing the smartwatch, so it's very much a part of you, and you can't say, ha, I can wear it, you can't, right?
So we do have that argument with her a lot. She keeps asking us, well, you're doing it, why can't I'm like, how old am I and how old are you? When you get to my age, you can also do it.
Yeah, but that's
a question she's already asking us.
That argument won't hold water another couple of years.
Yeah.
No, precisely, because it's okay for me to be sorry, thank you. It's okay for me to be on the phone, but the minute I tell my daughter, okay, hey, you can't be on that phone, you can't watch this, your 1 hour is up, right? And then it's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm working. I said, oh, even I'm working. And I was like, no, it doesn't work like that, right? So I completely get it. Like, technology is here to stay, and what Shruti also said, it's kind of, you have to regiment it, because that's exactly what needs to be done. And Danish, you mentioned the whole point of sugar. Okay, so even my my wife and I are kind of no sugar, no this, no that. But yeah, it didn't really work out. She knows that she just knows sweet things are better than any other random thing. But what happened with us when we were seeking admission in her school, that was about in 2019. This was the school that I went to. Things had changed. We took her to the school, the interview happened, whatnot. She was a little under the weather, my daughter. And then the person who was interviewing us was the vice president, the vice principal, and my wife did not have a very good conversation, because she started asking these very weird sexist things, that, oh, you must be the homemaker, oh, you must be sitting at home all day, acha, you're a writer, oh, freelancer ho gaya, right? So those sort of things. So anyway, it didn't start off really well. And then they said, okay, you know what, go to the class and check out what the classroom is all about. Now, she's 3 years old, right? This is for the play group. You can't leave a child alone with a stranger. No, we know this for a fact, but you're in an education, institution, and that's fine or whatever. But the child doesn't know that, right? So they were trying to kind of, invite her in. Aja beta, see so many toys, blah blah. She refused to go. And we weren't allowed in the room. The parents are not supposed to go. Only the child's supposed to go. I kid you not. The counselor, the coordinator, whoever was in the classroom, came out with a bowl of chocolates and said, "Girl, come." And that's exactly what my daughter. She just took one chocolate and went straight and knocked it on her head. And I was like, "Is that how you're going to lure the kids into school, by giving them like chocolates and sweets?"
But that's sugar. What do you do?
Whatever.
That's just what it is.
But
and it works across age groups the same way. I'm sure Dani can be lured in with chocolate. You want to ask any questions, we just go quietly.
But again, with that, my theory is pretty much the same as social media. My whole point was that I feel it would have been better if we had exposed her to it gently and kind of regulated in her life.
Yeah.
I have seen her friends who attack a birthday cake with their bare hands because their parents are not stopping them from having sugar. I don't want her to go to that extreme either. Like, but I feel that it's like this. It's like the internet. It's like it's going to be a part of their lives. There is nothing you can do to stop them, because if you want your child to stop having sugar, then move into the forest and live in the treehouse. Then don't live in the city, where all these things are available. if you're making that choice, then you can't deny them or deprive them of it. It's your job is to regulate it and moderate it. That's all.
Absolutely. And Shruti, so I did watch Mentalhood, and interesting show. I like what they did with all the characters. And you were the single mom going through a separation or some kind of a divorce, right?
Yeah.
Um, there were certain dad roles that were written in that show, right? You had the very powerful, extremely wealthy dad who pays for stuff but doesn't want to get involved. You had the single dad, obviously. You had the dad who was kind of 50-50.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly going to be involved with the kids, but I'll be the fun dad, right?
Yeah.
The mother can do all the stuff, but I'll be the fun dad. Do you think? And I probably know the answer, but I want to hear it from you because you are a mom. You've been through this journey of parenting, and then you play that role. What is it that you see in real life when it comes to dads?
Okay, so it's really weird. Which is that Noah Baumbach? When you were young? No, when you were young or while we were young? So there's this film called While We Were Young. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's by Noah Baumbach, and there's this couple who's just had a baby, and you're just seeing these two very frazzled parents with this newborn, and the father opens the door and a friend comes in and says, "Hey man, you're a dad. So how do you love your child?" And he was like, "I love myself more." That's it. That pretty much sums up parenting for father. So it's I don't know. It's weird. I do think, yes, of course, there have been gender stereotypes and all of that happening and social conditioning and blah, 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 all of that. But I do believe that biology plays a very big part in parenting. And maybe there's just some gene, some hormone that keeps kids more, whether it's, I don't know if it's a mom's responsibility or it just comes as natural instinct. Like you always say a mother's instinct, you never say father's instinct. You know what I mean?
It's sexist.
Yes, it is, of course. But I do feel that, so it's very simple. If tomorrow Danish and I are offered work, he will say, "Okay, I'm on."
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, "Okay, listen, let me figure this out." I have to first think of Alina. It just happens instinctively. Now, I'm not saying that Danish is not concerned about her, but he kind of knows that, okay, she's looked after. So he doesn't have to worry about it. For me, I have to consult him. I have to check with my parents. I have to see if I'm going to be okay. Will she be okay? I have to think of like 4 different parameters before I say yes to anything. That's a long term. I'm not talking about a day shoot because then I know it can be handled. But so it's really weird. I think, I remember when I had Alina, a friend of mine said, "Just remember one thing, the kids are always the mothers." Now, whether it's true, not true, I don't know how the animal kingdom works, but clearly there's a nurturing instinct or a mother's instinct or something that makes moms the way moms are and makes dads the way dads are. And I think here's the funny part. It could be an evolutionary thing. I don't know. Back in the day, when we were hunter-gatherers, I don't know if men had to go travel land. If they remain attached to their kids, they would not have been able to provide for them. I don't know. I'm assuming that could be one of the reasons. We've also been designed a certain way because of how we've evolved, right?
Sure.
So I think when you take the primary role of a husband or a father going to get food for his child, if he remains so attached to his baby that he gets immobilized, how is he going to provide for the kid? So I don't know. Also, maybe, breastfeeding is something that only a woman can do. So I don't know. But it just, I'm in no way weighing judgment on it. I genuinely think it's a biological thing that separates moms from dads. It's just that. And I keep telling Danish this all the time, that I may be the more involved parent, the more hands-on parent, the more attached parent. But strangely, again, saying this just once, never again, he's the better parent. He really is the better parent. He has more perspective on how to raise Alina better than me, because I see it so much and so closely that I get very emotional about raising her. He maintains a very good balance between being emotionally attached to her and yet trying to remain as logical or rational around her and her upbringing. I get very emotionally high strung. So I do feel that despite being a more hands-on parent, he's actually the better parent. And I think it's a really good balance.
And I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I never said those words. I'm holding a gun. There's a gun here.
no, but so
I never said.
The record button is on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
so no, I mean just circling back, right? I
No,
mean,
there's nothing here.
so a couple of years ago, right, when Nadir and I had the idea to do the podcast, uh, we had this instinct. I mean, I knew Nadir since we worked together, and I had seen how he was with his daughter, and at least, I'm not going to like uh, blow my own trumpet, but I was also quite involved with my son, and we had this feeling that there were more dads that were also involved, but it's never really seen. I mean, last year, of course, everyone was putting up pictures in the lockdown on Instagram and all of that, but you never really hear these stories. So I'm really glad that you said that about Danish, and I hope you were not holding a gun to her.
So honestly, I think it's really weird because I remember talking to a couple of men when I was doing some work, and we were discussing maternity leave, and he just turned around and said something that why does society sort of assume that fathers don't want to see their kids being raised? Do you know how many moments get lost that we never get to encounter? Like the first time that Alina said, her first word was Papa, and Danish wasn't around to hear it because he was working and I was with her, and she said Papa, and I wanted to slap her because I'm like, come here, say Mama. But she said Papa, and he didn't get to hear it firsthand as her first word. Now it's all like, I don't know if he felt bad that he missed out on that moment. And we just assume that, okay, dads don't want to be around, or they're kind of, there's benign neglect and they don't really care and whatever. But we don't know the real story. At least I don't know. I don't know how dads feel when they miss out on big milestones in their kids' lives, or the fact that, today when I talk to my parents, I always sort of surpass my dad and just go to my mom. I never, not surpass my dad. He's the last person who know intimate details about my life. My mom knows. So I don't know how he feels about it. So I think it's a little difficult, but everyone's kind of suffering a little bit from whatever social conditioning has gone down through the years. The men and the women both.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because you started with biological evolution, and then obviously there was this huge gap which you now correctly defined it as social conditioning. I actually wanted to ask Danish because I really want his perspective on this. That in today's day and age, don't you think the role of the father has changed tremendously? I'm talking to you as a person living in the metros, very SEC A plus, right? Maybe B, not even getting into the lower tiers, but men are changing. I mean, the fact that there are two dads, Peter and me talking to Danish, and another dad, we've identified this gap where we feel that yes, dads are contributing. Danish, don't you think you are also clearly not a part of that typical biological evolution, social conditioning? You've broken out of it. You are an outlier in that case.
Firstly, I don't think biological conditioning from the Stone Age, I don't subscribe to the theory that it still applies, because the universe that we live in is very different from the universe that existed tens of thousands of years ago. So I feel that if anything, we need to redefine biological evolution in terms of the current environment that we live in. Secondly, I do agree with you, yes, that in that very narrow demographic, because that's a very narrow demographic that you pinpointed, and about 80% of this country at least doesn't fall under that demographic. There has been a change in terms of how fathers contribute to families and to child rearing, and what their traditional role is defined as. Having said that, there are still, like she said, there are still friends of ours within the same circle who are surprisingly old-fashioned in the way that they believe a child should be brought up, or the gender roles prescribed within a marriage. And it surprises me, because I guess there are also a surprisingly large number of people in that same demographic that still believe in arranged marriages and having never met a person before getting married to them.
Yeah.
Again, a local Indian phenomenon, not so much globally.
Yeah.
So while I agree with you that yes, the role of fatherhood has changed, I feel it's also something that comes from within. If I'm an outlier, in my family, I'm the first person to go into the film industry, for example. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. Now, that is also a choice that I made. Now, if I'm an outlier, I feel that then that is again restricted to those number of fathers or men who are also outliers in most other things, aspects of their lives. I don't think you'll find a man in an arranged marriage in a traditional Gujarati, Marwadi, Sindhi family or whatever, living in a joint family and suddenly saying, "Ab main bacche ke parvarish mein utna hi involved hu jitna meri bevi hogi." I doubt it. It's generally, if it's a type of person who does it, then that type of person applies that philosophy to everything in their lives. Which is why I said it's a very narrow demographic. But yes, there has been a change. There is most definitely a larger involvement of fathers in raising a child, and in a very, very, very minuscule proportion, sometimes they are the primary caregivers as well. Again, more so in the West than in India. But we've seen that as well. I have friends where like the mother's a lawyer and the father stayed at home and raised 2 sons entirely by himself almost.
Wow.
Because he's working from home. So, but like I said, that's one person. And I have 400 friends on Facebook. So, which is a very low number. But that's the percentages that we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's indicative of any larger societal change in India, at least not for the next 5 to 10 years, I feel. It's a slow change. It's coming. It's happening. But it's minuscule, honestly.
And if I may go against my tribe and face a fair amount of backlash, I do think that women play a big part in this as well. Because it's strange, as a mother, I feel, okay, I want to bring up my daughter a certain way and everyone should subscribe to that way, including her father. And it really takes a lot to say, okay, we will raise her differently. And of course, we're on the same page about many things and we sort of discuss stuff.
Yeah.
There are times when we override each other's opinions or whatever. But there is a big part of that women play in deciding how much role the father should have, because you're always like, I'll handle it, or I'll just bring the father in to be that voice of terror. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to strike a balance, because I realize that now that my mom can't be my dad and vice versa. They play very, very distinct roles. And again, not in a sexist manner at all. It's just there's something about how you connect with each parent.
Yeah.
And every child should have that with both their parents. Again, natural instinct aside, but women also have to step back and say, okay, so my husband's being a little indulgent, or my husband's being a little too strict, or whatever. You have to, we're all figuring it out. None of us have the answers. None of us have a rule book that, okay, it can only be done this way. And if I give myself the leeway to say, okay, I'm figuring out mothering, then I have to give Danish that as well, saying, okay, he's also figured, he's not done this before. I hope not.
That's the part 2 of the challenge.
Yeah, that's when I go off and then you guys have your own.
But honestly, it might also be a factor of the sex of your child, perhaps, because in our case, we have a daughter, and so she's naturally, at least at this age, more connected to her. I'm not like, we never wanted a son, for example. It was like that would have probably caused a divorce, because I was still scared of having a son.
I would have left it. If I had a boy,
but like, I don't know, if you have a son, perhaps the father's role is a little more pronounced in that. I have no idea. I mean, we have a biased point of view here, but yeah, I still stand by it. I think it's still a minority.
Right. So, we've talked so much, but just I want you to leave all our listeners and those viewing this also, both the moms as well as the dads, any bit of advice that you would like to share with them, if any?
Well, given that we've said the word divorce 6 times in this I don't think we're the right people to be giving any sort of advice. I would repeat what I said earlier, which is that if you want to have a child, everything else will kind of sort itself out, or you will figure it out. Just like any other big decision in your life, getting married, moving cities, taking a new job, having a child, it will sort itself out. But the one thing that differentiates this from the other is, the only thing you need to be sure about is that you want it.
Yeah.
If you don't, then your life is going to be miserable. You have to want to have that child. If even one of you doesn't want it, then I would recommend not taking the plunge. Honestly, that's the only thing I've learned in these last 6 years. Because if I hadn't wanted a child right now, I'd be stark craving man.
Yeah.
It still is dark.
That's not a choice.
I don't blame Alina for it at all.
What else? Give advice.
I think for me, it's basically, it's a day at a time. You can be a bad mom, a bad dad on some days, it's okay. And something that my therapist told me is that you will never be a good parent, you will only be a good enough parent. So you have to sort of keep your goals very realistic. And something that I did very specifically, and I'm still sort of on a journey, is that when Alina was going to be born, I was very clear that I wanted to stop generational trauma. I was very clear about it. I still may do it, so I don't know. But I was very clear that I didn't want to pass on trauma as an heirloom to her, saying, my mom did this to me, so now I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
My mom did know better. She did the best she could with the information she had at her disposal. I feel I have a lot more information at my disposal. So for me, it was very important to sort of go in there and say, okay, how am I going to change things? I don't want to pass on things to her that I don't like, that was passed on to me involuntarily by my parents. So
it's raising a child, not ragging. It doesn't work like that.
yeah, well, so it was just
senior
like
ने हमारे साथ किया था, तो हम भी
no,
करेंगे
but
बेटा.
it is. I do feel that if you want to change something, then you have to change. It's that simple. And your kids, no matter what you tell them, they will only do what they see. They will never do what they're told. So
That's true.
If you want your child to be a certain way, you have to show them. You can't tell them, because it's the first question they ask. But you didn't do it. So
which also means that if you want to raise your child a particular way, first you have to live that life.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
the only way you're going to get to do it.
Yeah.
So otherwise you're just a hypocrite, and children are very quick at finding out hypocrisy.
So if I stop Alina from eating sweets, it's because I don't eat sweets. I don't chomp on chocolates and say you can't have it.
I don't.
So yeah, so we balance that out. It's like, boss, I will offer her that chocolate because I'm not stopping anytime soon. So, but yeah, I think primary, if you want your child to be a certain way, you have to show them. So
Awesome. Right.
That's great. Guys, thank you so much. I mean, our mutual gratitude for you guys doing this. You all have said such personal stories, and we really appreciate it. So, thanks a lot.
Wow, that was quite a fun chat, huh, Nadir?
Yeah, I mean, you have certain preconceived notions
Yeah.
about, people in the film industry, but I just love the way they opened up. They shared such interesting and personal stories, and very anecdotal. So I had a lot of fun, and I didn't even come to know where the time was going. So yeah, it was a great conversation.
I think one thing I learned from our conversation is that, no matter who you are or what you do or things like that, the struggle is real for everyone. I mean, every parent has the same problems. I mean, giving their
Yeah.
kids sugar or screen
Yeah.
time or conflict between parents, like, who's going to play good cop, bad cop. But
True.
yeah. So, you know what? If you've enjoyed watching this video, why don't you subscribe to our channel? Because we're going to try keeping this regular. So stay tuned for that.
We are also available on social media. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can like our stuff, comment, share, and keep those suggestions coming. If you think of some really cool couple or a cool guest that you think we should interview, then yeah, just drop in a message, slide into our DMs, and we'll do anything that we can to get that guest on Pops in a Pod. So until then, enjoy, have a great time, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you guys.